Welcome back, subscribers. This is going to be kind of like a series of these. I don't know when I'm going to do this. It's all about inspiration and when I get kind of fired up whenever somebody either pushes on me or I learned about something that is activates me in a way because I'm a human being and that's just the way that I work. My name's Daniel. This is Reservoir Human. We're identifying the transactional elements of human experience, whether that be business or social, etc. Basically, everything to us is a transaction. Everything that you do is somehow vibrationally transacted, whether it's in the ether, opposed to like at a bank or business or whatever. So there's everything that you do. If you make a choice, it's a transaction. All right, that's our MO. And then we have a paid site where we basically kind of hash out what's the angle? Like, how do you not necessarily like game the system, but how do you structure it so that you're moving, creating a heading so that you're trading information in this new system because no one's really doing it. And that's what I found out. I was like, well, why don't we just start doing this on our own? Because I'm going to chronicle and keep track of this for our own company because I'm getting into real world assets and basically being my own bank. All right. People talk about it, but nobody really does it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to put that out to the public. I'm just going to do it privately. So that's what it is. And then once people understand it, it's like, it's not my philosophy. What I want is I want other people that are similar, like-minded, but they challenge me or they go out and they try other things that are like variations of it. So it's kind of like doing music, right? If I'm playing guitar and you play guitar, maybe we can collaborate and say like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Oh, I got a jazz background. I got a rock background. Wow, really? Oh, yeah, my dad was really in folk and whatever, right? And then you play and then you're like, oh, I never really would have thought of like XYZ. And somebody will say like, oh, well, you need to go talk to this guy. You go check out this. And it causes growth and expansiveness. It's fantastic. And that type of collaboration is how you remain successful as you move into the later years of your life. And the reason why it's important now is because they're changing everything. They're changing how transactions are being accounted for, and that there is specific rules and compliance elements that are part of it, which, because there's new rules and compliance elements, they they are going to be gamed, meaning, but the gaming isn't like the old gaming. That's what I'm going to talk about. It's transparent. The gaming is you're not going to pay attention to all of it. You're going basically like you're going to need an AI to basically figure out like how to traverse through this as a guide to be able to walk through this new system to be in a better place in the next 10 to 20 years. Like you're going to have that. If you are not in that space, you're like, well, I'll just keep going to work and keep saving my money and put it in the bank and be like, well, there from what we found, like that's not really going to be very advantageous to you. Like whenever they said at the World Economic Forum, like you'll own nothing and be happy, what we have found like recently in the past couple of weeks is like kind of, and then be like, well, that's the World Economic Forum. That's Europe, Danny. Like, well, we're the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with us. And be like, sorry, it doesn't work that way. This is a worldwide initiative that they're doing. So yeah, you can absolutely opt out. But if you like your phone, your Netflix, and you like to hop on an airplane and you like to go to Aruba once a year, right? Whatever it is, and you like to go out with your buddies on your golf vacation, whatever the hell it is, you're going to have to play by these new rules, and they're going to be more penalizing than they were before. So it's basically like we're going to take this away. We're going to let you have access to this. And it's like this. But at the end of the day, like if you play by the rules and you understand how it works, it will be an advantage to you to be moving into this space. If you don't, be like, oh God, this sounds like the mark of the beast. Oh my gosh, this is tribulation. Like, okay, here we go. So all we're going to talk about today, this video anyway, is going to be the extension of the handshake deals. All right. So you have real paper contractor people that, you put into smart contracts. Smart contracts inside of digital space it is what it is. It's black and white. These are the terms. This is the time limit on it, XYZ, whatever. That's it. There's no like, oh, if anybody's ever dealt with blockchain, it's like, let me call them up at the help desk and see if I made a mistake. And yeah, You either sent the coins or you didn't. They're either in your wallet or they're not. Either or, right? There's like they have created a transactional environment of the old way. I'll do this metaphorically. It's as if you're traveling down a road. The old way is that you could take a left or a right, right? But you're like, man, I want to kind of cut right through the woods this way because there's a pond over there, and that looks really nice. There's a waterfall and a pond. That looks really great. Well, but the roads don't go that way. And you're like, yeah, well, we're gonna go that way. So what they've done is they basically have created like a barrier so that you have to go left or right. There is no choice. And you're like, well, that doesn't sound any good. That's not freedom of choice. Being like, it is. It turns out that the road that goes to the left or the right, there's signs. And it'd be like, hey, if you want to go to the pond, you got to take a left. All right, I want to go to that pond. You got a map? Yeah. Well, you got to go left. And what's going to happen? Well, it's going to run you past this and this and this and this and this. Oh, there's a restaurant over there, and it forces you to do business along the way, right? Well, in order to get to that pond, you're going to have to buy hiking equipment. You're going to have to get some lunch. You're going to have to stay. Well, there's a town over there to the left, right? Now I'm doing more commerce and more business. That's basically what they're doing here. They're creating, instead of you shortcutting business, all right, and hoarding, they're creating a system to ensure that everybody that is playing in the business world has to follow the same rules all the way across the board. There's no cutting through, all right? You just follow that line. Now, regular business owners, we've always done this, all right? We've been compliant. We've done what we're supposed to do. We pay our taxes, yada, yada, whatever. There's another space, and I know people know about this. There's old money. There's networks. The networks are the corruptive elements to business. And say like, well, how do you get rid of these networks? Like, what's the reason? Oh, it's the Illuminati. It's the Freemasons. Well, kind of. All right, and I'm going to talk about why that is. They've created these because there's always been this kind of pissing match historically between upper level administration. Basically, if you just go back to the church, Caesar, even if you go back that far, that there's been the ones that were the doing class, the doers and the organizers, and then the ones that were sitting on the throne dictating occasionally, like micromanaging. All right, it's the same type of thing. And the ones that were the doer class are like, let's have a meeting in my mom's basement. All right, yeah. Who thinks this way? Well, we know Joe thinks that way, and Jack thinks this way, and Susie thinks this way. Talk with them and tell them we're going to meet in my mom's basement, 8 o'clock tonight. Let's talk about some things. And then you go have a private meeting. That's the start of it. And the start of it is of good intention. So say, for example, your emperor's Caligula, all right? So if you know anything about history, I'm a history buff. It's not going so great. You're like, well, we just need to have a meeting because this guy's totally off his rocker. Okay. But if he finds out we're having a meeting, he's going to kill us. And you're like, right. So let's go have this meeting. And this is with what happens. And this is how it gets started. So it's like of good intention. But as that moves forward, there ends up being like this corruptive element that comes into play in any system. This happens in computer science. This happens in your backyard with plants and weeds and so on. This happens it's contamination that happens. The larger that something grows and gets bigger, there's only so many things that you can pay attention to, and there's a contamination that comes in. It's like a natural order inside the universe, and on Earth especially, this happens across the board for all systems. So in the beginning, it's just they create oaths and blood contracts. All right, like I think of like John Wick is a great example. Like super popular movie, and they're creating contracts with a blood thumbprint, and they have their own money system, and they follow the rules and XYZ. And the whole movie is like he's out of the system. He basically bought his way out of the system. I'm not doing this anymore. Da 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 da. And then somebody drags him back into it, right? And it's like the whole movie's thing. And now he's basically trying to bring down the system. One guy, knowing full well that the system is like corrupt across the board. And then those that are inside of the system that are kind of helping him out, they know the system's corrupt too, but they can't leave because they know that they're going to get killed. So that's basically how this whole system runs on every level that I have seen and experiencing people that are of that have high level security clearances all the way down to a mom and pop shop that sell, they're the local bread maker, in town or whatever. Like it's all business. They all have specific markets that they're doing business in, but the ones that have been around longer, there is a corruptive element that there's some of them are against it, but some of them do it because that they know that they can't get out of it. They can't stop because it's their livelihood, that they have to protect their family. So like the higher it goes up the rank, that they're threatened by the families, your life, your whatever, your livelihood. And then as it gets with less responsibility, it's basically just monetary. It just comes down to like somebody's going to be restricting the way that you can do business. So regardless of however that all works, and like what level of this hierarchy or whatever level of corruptive environment that you're in, it's not healthy for business. So what essentially happens is like I've got some notes here I was looking at. It's like it's a non-transparent like visibility trap. Okay, so ultimately like what happens is like you can't move forward with expanding and scaling whenever this corruptive element starts to seep in, because your energy ends up like dealing with the corruption more than it does about expanding and making it, and moving into a direction, right? Into a direction of creation and expansiveness. It goes to a certain point. So it's like a bell curve of business, right? It gets like this point when you first start off, and you're like, wow, this is really, really great, da 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 da. And then other competitors and things like that, oh my gosh, we're going to do exactly the same thing. And then it starts to kind of wane and fall off. And you basically, whenever you do business, as the years go by, you have to constantly add things, reinvent things, make things more efficient, hiring, firing, so on and so on and so on. It's difficult. Sometimes you get lucky. I've been very lucky with my business experiences that there's things that I will put up with and things that I won't put up with. And I have like a very hard line in the sand, and I'm like, I'm not doing that, period. So these handshake deals and how blockchain is going to be changing these things. So in secret societal environments, all right, so if you're in a networking group, now this can start off in a very small space. This could be you're a member of the Rod and Gun Club, you're a member of the Elk Club, or the whatever, the Shriners, there's all kinds of them, the Rotary Club, the Optimist Club. There's another one that locally here, there's a local one called Ruatan that they have here. And it's basically like people that are just in the community come together. So it's not a church. It's sometimes it will be held at a church, but it's more of like community based, not spiritually based. All right. So there's like, all right, that's the line in the sand that we have. Optimist, that's another one. There's a whole bunch of them. The ones that are like international, national would be like, say, Masons. Mason would be like, whether it's the York or the Scottish Rite. They have all kinds of different degrees. You have to pay dues. That not all of them are corrupt. Many of them that are not in the they are not adept, is what the term is called. They basically have to go through the ranks and prove like allegiance or of knowledge and show that they're like a pretty trustworthy person. And then they will be confronted by a brother that is inside of the group to allow them to move into the next step, right? And then whenever that happens, and that's when they have these ritualistic events and things like that and ceremonies, and they become basically christened in to the brotherhood. All right. So like you have like, so if you're like on the lower degrees, depending upon what right you are, um, you have access to certain things, and that certain members will open things up to you and transact with you, whether it's in business or in personal things and corruptive elements business. So the same basic things happen inside of mafias. It's like behind the scenes politicking. All right, it's the same thing. It's political gameplay back and forth, that you don't like this guy and this guy behind the scenes does this and so on and so on. And I experienced this not from a perspective of being inside of an organized, um, networking group, but as my business grew when I was younger, when I was contracting, I had a lot of people I did business with. Um, Subcontractors, lawyers, accountants, so on and so on and so on. People you go out to lunch with, people take me out to lunch, we go to golfing, so on and so on. Business relationships. And people that I was doing business with, some of them you would find out were maybe you wouldn't really want to be associating yourself with them outside of the business. But it depends on what they did for you. So say, for example, I had a painter. Uh, his name was Dave. One of them was Dave Grady. Super nice guy. He had 3 sons that worked for him. Super nice guy. Great job painting. His 3 sons were problematic. Nice guys. You'd have them on the job. I mean, I'm talking like multi-million-dollar houses. People, affluent people that were working for it. And these guys were an eyelash away from being in prison. In fact, one of the sons, and that's why I tell the story about it, it's funny. One of the sons had an ankle bracelet. Was allowed. He was like work release. He was allowed to go paint. And I noticed it the one day. I go, what the hell is that? Like, what'd you do? Oh man, I was innocent. It's like, can you cover that shit up? Because if the owners see that shit on your leg, I don't want to deal with that heat. I don't need that. Like, that's showing that I, as a contractor, am not being responsible for the people that I bring on the job, which is their freaking house. And I was like, that's bad. All right. And I talked to him directly, but then I talked to the dad and be like, look, I don't have a problem with you guys, but you can't, they're going to freak. Do you guys understand that? I'm like, I don't care if you just take a handkerchief or just make it so that it's not so freaking obvious, you know? And at the time, I think it wasn't like he wasn't trying to cover it up. It was just like you could see it like in his pants or something. Like, I don't know, wrap a bandana around it or something. Get a big sock, do something. But like, I don't want to see it. No possibilities of that. I said, I don't care what you did, but for people, that's not normal. So you get the drift. So, but okay, transactionally, I'm covering, that's a handshake deal. All right. That's not good. Now, but I'm giving him a variance and saying like, okay, I'm not going to be absolute. Like, I don't want criminals on my job, but they do a good job and they're not, he just got caught with dope or something. It wasn't like he was a murderer or something like that. Like, I know that, but like if you see that, you're like, okay, that guy's got a freaking ankle on. You don't really know. And again, like people, whenever they're having problems with the law, like they have a tendency of not really like telling the whole truth. But again, like I had experience with these guys for years and knew them. And I'm like, you guys are fucking like, they just consistently are like kind of out of control. But not in a dangerous way. And if the people weren't around and they're not mixing with the customers, do you see what I mean? Like, but that's a handshake deal. Where it gets to be incredibly corruptive is that whenever people inside of these orders or networking groups, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be political, Illuminati, Mason, Jesuit, or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Any of those ones. That they're corrupting and they're doing it behind the scenes because they just maybe they don't like somebody or somebody flexed on them and said like, hey, I'm not doing that shit. Right. Oh, well, everybody always does that. Well, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not like you guys are, I'm not following your orders. All right. So these people that are in the upper level groups that are the national groups. I mean, I'm not talking about like They're one of the networking groups, a small one I was in, was called the Barter Business Exchange. I think I brought this up, but I don't think it's around anymore. But there was a Raleigh chapter, and we basically like had a group of people that were business owners, and we traded amongst each other. And I've actually given some ideas on how this could be worked inside of using blockchain and get out of taxation. Like it's not necessary. Like basically, they're telling you like if you set up these networks correctly, and the money never comes back into fiat, you guys could intermix and trade amongst yourselves. So I have some of that on our private site and to talk about that because it's not really for like public distribution because it's like it could be considered like a strategy or advice or something like that. So I'm not really going to talk about that. If you want to check it out, you can go to our paid site and either contribute to the site and have it be free, or you can pay. Simple as that. But anyway, back to these handshake deals. So the upper level guys, the more intense things come, like when it comes to like nation states, governments, and so on and so on, they want to control things. All right, they want to make it so that they have marching orders, or and these guys are like of an order. They'll say that they're like, and they use this as like a thing, like their language. They'll say, "You're in order or you're out of order." So if you're in, they do that at think of like a judge and jury. Okay, same thing. Out of order, in order. They do the same thing. They use the same language. But most of these guys, especially the corruptive branches, the higher level ones, they're not in order. Many of the guys are totally out of order. That's why they use that language all the time. They're like, well, I'm in the order. Like they get some free pass. And you're like, that basically tells me if somebody comes out and says something like that, they're not in order. If someone says that, you either are or you aren't. You don't need to be. The whole thing is like they have to have these structured systems and follow their orders because they're not capable of following them on their own. And then what's used as a ruse to get them to be communal that makes it seem like it's a benefit is they're like, oh, well, you're either born into this system, okay, all right, or you can pay to be coming into this system. And whenever you do that, that you have all of these things that are available to you. You'll be promoted in work and you'll have wealth and fame and fortune and like all this other shit. And they're like, but whenever we call on you, you're going to do whatever we tell you to do. Right? You see this all through Hollywood. You'll see like made people. So this is the same elements that comes through with mafia. So each one of the mafia classes, they have their own mechanism for coming into it, right? So the Italian mafia, it's blood relation. You can't be a made guy unless you had like Sicilian blood, like from both parents, and so on and so on. And it all came down to blood, the blood orders. Okay, that meant something because all it really is a sifting. It doesn't necessarily mean that person is a better person. It just is like that they hinge a lot on the DNA of the people is how you get to be in the upper spaces, and that's where the same thing happens like with alumni in colleges on a lower level, where you'd be like if you run into somebody who's let's say you want the Duke, like here, if you go to Duke and you run into somebody else from Duke, or you want to go do business with somebody and they're like, oh well who's in the alumni, you just go down the pipe, and it like gives you this sense of security because the person has experienced 4, 6, 8 years of campus life and knows how the structure works and how the system works at Duke. And this guy's a lawyer, this is a finance guy, so on. And then you spread out and you network inside of that spatial environment. The ones that are but inside of that, can corruption happen? Absolutely because but will those guys do business with other people? Sure, they're a little bit more open to it because it hasn't been drilled into them that they don't have a prejudice necessarily towards somebody that's not from Duke. Do you see what I mean? But it's supposed to be kind of like a helping hand, right? So you go to a new town or something like that, and you want to kind of get something started, new business started. It would be really sure nice if you just had somebody that was kind of like on the same page, like you want to go get something started, get something new. And it'd be really nice to have somebody that just kind of knew what the hell was going on, and how you perceive business? Like, what's your experience level and things in these natures? So these are good things. When they become corrupted, it's incredibly toxic and it's unscalable. And then it ends up, I said, becoming this pissing match between both the two sides. Like, oh, I'm not doing business with him. Oh, yeah, he's doing business with these guys. And they create this prejudice, and it's not healthy for business. The blockchain and RWAs, I wouldn't say eliminates it, but it it doesn't make a shit in hill of beans because it's autonomous. Like, nobody really knows what you're doing. It's public, but nobody really knows what you're doing business wise. So like, if you had, let's say you're a brother in one of these secret orders, and they're like, we can't do business with anyone outside of the order because those are our rules, and you will follow the order. All right, you'll follow the rules of the order, and you're like, but then you find out, you're like, well, I got a business deal in such and such XYZ, but these people down here are not, they're not in the order, but I want to give them, I want to invest in their business plan. I can invest. And these guys wouldn't, yeah, but I have to follow the orders because then I'm kind of like lying and going behind their back, and I'm like breaking trust and da 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 da. But, well, why can't we do business down there? Well, because we're not allowed. We're not doing business down. You follow our orders. You follow it. There's no individuality. You see, like, whenever you get into one of these groups, the higher up that you get. So like, if you're like say a Duke alumni, and you're a doctor, and you do your people, your customers are Duke people, but then you're like, well, if NC State people or people that have no college educations, they can come in and I can do this. You're fine. You're all right with it. You don't have the prejudice towards it. That there's like a hierarchical prejudice that's created in these societies, the secret societies, depending upon what level you're at, causes the amount of intensity that they won't do business with other people that are not of the order. And this is not good for business. And it also creates, it's a very weak perception, because that as there is a specific agenda that they're required to follow orders by, to follow a heading that they have to require it to go by. And the bad thing is that type of behavior it's incredibly corrosive. There's a reason for it at the top level, but it's now percolated down into the lower levels. And this is why this blockchain element, from what we have done research on, that it makes sense as to why it's being implemented, is because these it reopens the door for trust with anyone. All right, it makes no difference of what your skin color is and what your religious background is or whatever else. If I go out and I do a smart contract on the open market, in the digital market, someone's either going to buy it or sell it. Simple as that. As soon as I open up the contract, and I've got a buyer and they meet my terms, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter where the money came from. It doesn't matter, like, what they believe in. None of that stuff. Like, I can't really pick and choose because I'm putting it on the open market. Now, inside of that, does that mean that I always have to do that? Like, no, I can keep it privatized. I can tokenize it through the RWA market and keep it privatized. Yeah, I can do that. And then keeping business. But you can see, if I did that, that's how these secret society guys think. All right. And that there's so many of them that are out there. So it's not just secret society guys, but this is also old money. So when I came to the South has these, they call it the good old boy network. And this shit was rampant, that you go into a town that might be in the outskirts and we'd be building houses. And yeah, it was like the sheriff, knows this guy, and this guy knows this guy, and be like, where are you boys from? What you doing? Yeah, you building houses on our property? Shit like that. And it's not a good feeling, and it hampers business because it causes trouble, to the point where, in my experience, I had this guy tell me, he's one of these order guys. He's in one of these orders, and he's like, you don't understand. Like, when you do business with me, the people that I do business with, they deal in blood. Like, if you don't follow through with your word, that they're going to take you out, basically. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, your word, if you follow through, then it makes no difference. I don't need to be threatened to follow through, or you telling me that you come from this space of this threatening environment that you have to do what you see. That's kind of the point. It's kind of like you're being like, we have to put these rules and laws in, because if I don't, and I don't follow the orders, I will just run amok, and I will be a scourge on society. Be like, that's kind of the point. So if somebody has to be inside of a restricted environment, they're really not a good person. So and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, I don't give a shit what order you're from. It makes no difference to me. Like, if you're a good person, you want to do business, we can do business, right? But as far as like your people dealing with blood, I'm like, well, shit. I was a general contractor in North Carolina. Like, my license is like it's not suspended, but I just didn't like renew it. So when my license was being used, I was building a house in North Carolina. I said, I'm thinking this, like, assuming like that other people know this, that you don't have to be inside of a secret order or a specialized secret society or whatever else, because, oh, they deal in blood and all this other shit. I'm like, dude, I didn't tell them this, but I'm in Wake County. Okay, Wake County's Raleigh. We're building houses in Chatham County. You can look this up. Be like, Chatham County. The guy's name was Dave Green. He was a building inspector in Chatham County. This is about 20 years ago or so, maybe 22 years ago. So Dave Green he was the single building inspector. So we were building in Chatham County. It's towards Chapel Hill. And there's a good old boys network in Chatham County. Wake County was more progressive, and there was just so much more expansiveness that was going on, in all the towns, and a cooperative movement to pump money into North Carolina, all these incentives and things like that. So the towns were really growing. And say for example, like if I got a building inspection in my town, I would have there might be 4 building inspectors. Wake County, coming out of downtown Raleigh, the whole county, they'd have dozens of guys, but they would do like specific quadrants and sections all over the whole county. Chatham County, 1 guy. All right, and it was only to drive there, from my house was maybe 30 minutes or something like that. Handshake deals. Good old boys network, Chatham County. Chatham County is like south west of me, but it's south of Chapel Hill. All right, just wide open country. The Good Old Boys Network didn't like Dave. Dave Green was a building inspector, but he was more of like a Yankee guy, like he was like educated and, like going with like kind of the new system. He was like more of like a progressive guy. He wasn't part of the Good Old Boys Network. He wasn't part of the network. And we had, around this period, we had a change in our building code. We went from, it used to be called BOCA. I can't remember what it was called, like BOCCO. And it meant like building operational codes or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. It was a very thin book. And the new one, I don't have it on my thing. I haven't used it. But the new one was in 2000, I think it was 3, I think. Right around this period, they switched over to ICC, International Code Council. And that's the same code that they used in Florida, California. It was being adopted like nationwide. So ICC code is like, this is like the beginning of the building code changes of us moving into an international system. So when people talk about this stuff, like I've been involved in this, international changes and money and things like that, and operational codes in the early 2000s. All right. But in the building industry. So we could have a consistency of building. So like if you went from like, say, just imagine this. So if you go from North Carolina, and I'm a home builder in North Carolina, I ought to be able to take the same building codes and build in Michigan or Idaho or Arizona. And depending upon what the only changes that and this is in the book, was depending upon like the frost level. We're like set footings and things like that. So depending upon if how deep you'd have to dig a footing or something like that, or wind requirements because of hurricane, right? So all that shit was in the book. It was all done. So North Carolina was switching over to it. Dave was an International Code Council guy. So there's new rules that you have to follow. It was like 4 times, 6 times the amount of code that was in there before. And it rules like bolting, nailing, all kinds of things that you had to do. They weren't doing it in Chatham County. They're just doing an old boy network. This is the way we've done it for years. My daddy, he told me, he comes to me, and we were just learning as young builders, and anytime that we'd run into an issue, I would just like kind of take care of it, because I always respected the inspectors, because like if they don't pass it, I don't get to move forward on the project. And at any rate, we worked through it. We were building houses in a town called Pittsburgh, and there was really not much of anything out there. It was like we were like way ahead of the curve. Now it's been built up, like not a lot, but it's like kind of like it's still kind of an outpost. It's definitely it's not as much of an outpost as it was 20 years ago. I'll put it that way. But Dave's the only guy. I knew the town manager. I saw the map, like how they were like developing and creating the whole town, and the water filtration systems and sewage and everything. I knew everything about town because it was so tiny, and I just have to go in there. Like the town manager also did the permitting. Dave did, did the inspections. There just wasn't a lot going on, so I was like directly in it because it was so small. And then moving from the Raleigh network out there, I knew how the system worked, and they were just kind of like getting it started, so I could kind of see all this stuff. At any rate, one guy, these order guys talking about they deal in blood, the good old boys, they burnt the motherfucker's house down, right? They threatened him like we're going to kill you, but they just burned his house down. I know other guys that have been suicides, murders, you name it, in the building industry. So there is corruption and this mafioso type of like corruptive energy of weakness of change. All right. And it is in everything. So like when this dude from like a couple years ago is telling me like, hey, yeah, I can do business with you. Like I'm a brother, and you can trust my word and all this other shit. I'm like, I kept telling him like, just put it in writing. It's like, it's not a big deal. Just put it in writing. Because I already know the drill. I'm like, when someone says that, they're fucking lying to you flat out. If someone says bullshit like that, and that's one of these mechanisms that these guys fall back on. And is that all of them? Be like, no. But when somebody uses that and flexes it and says like, you don't understand. I'm of this. This is my background, and this is what we do. I've dealt with guys that are masons and all kinds. Priests, masons, you fucking name it. I've worked with them. The guys that are, never know it. The guys that are like good guys never fucking say one goddamn thing about it. I've worked for doctors and not even knowing they were doctors. That is another brotherhood, okay? By having an MD in front of your name, that's a brotherhood, absolutely. A lawyer, I've worked for people that that have gone through law school, passed bar, and they don't practice. I didn't even know they were lawyers. And those are guys that are very dangerous to go work for, because they know the system and they can fucking fuck you blind, all right? But when somebody comes out and they declare it and they tell you, this is my background and this is what we do, you don't understand. We could take XYZ out. I'm thinking like, you and everybody else, dude. Be like, oh. And when this guy was telling me about this, I was like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, he doesn't really know like how it works in the real world. Like, we cut people off in business. I have been cut off in business. If somebody goes against you, or you try to break a system that is in place, that somebody has control and power, that can make a phone call and make it so that you can't buy product anymore, they can't get something shipped, you name it, and cut your business off, that's power. Be like, he's talking about the same exact thing. Like, I don't need to be in a freaking order to be able to be experiencing something like that. Like the guy was like completely oblivious. This dude was about a year and a half ago, totally oblivious. Like, he had experience in kind of like banking, the higher level order environments, and I have it in the like a tier, like a couple of tiers below that. But like, I'm doing business with like senators and like U.S. senators. Like, I could tell stories about U.S. senators about this corruption, how these guys do business. Like, you'd be like, oh, how fucking dirty they are. Like, table turning, bullshit. And then them putting pressure back on the guys, like, yeah, I can't retaliate against this guy, and the reason why is because it's this dude. Like, he's connected to this guy, this guy, this guy. He just has to make one phone call and he can ruin my life. That's fucking power. So it's like, I've experienced all that. It's like, when you find out that someone died because of them like crossing a line with somebody else, shit. We've got right near here, and I'm going to cut this off. I've been talking forever about this. I'll talk about another story. The drug industry and drugs being inside the contracting world, and how those guys don't fuck around, you know? So it's like, so again, like corruption in these handshake deals in the blockchain, you can't really do this. It's a breath of fresh air. When I started learning about this, I'm like, these guys that think that they fucking own everything, they fuck off, they kiss off, they just bye. Be like, the hoarding and that weakness that they used in order to be able to keep things going their way and try to, corral everything the way that they wanted to. It's like, it's totally evaporating, and it's incredibly refreshing. And I think that ultimately there's going to be this like crying pissing match that's going to happen, and that's the reason why the markets are going to collapse, because they're going to retaliate against it, because they're so vested in the system that they created that now they're being rug pulled, and the new system allows for more of an open sourced experience. And again, they'll be like, no, the brothers are going to stay at and be like, okay, buddy. Be like, the amount of brothers that you have opposed to the amount of civilians and the people that regular citizens out there that have access to exactly the same shit you have now. Be like, your shit don't stink anymore, guys. Like, it's just like it's you're equalized. Be like, now we're resetting everything. How good are you? If I take away your networking and your corruption, how good are you? Be like, if you start us off at the same, you start me off and you off, whoever these guys are that need corruption in order to be successful. If you start us off with the same amount of capital resources, all right, are you able to build it as quickly and as fast as I am? That's somebody that does it, transparent. Well, we're just going to have to see, because now if you go into a transparent system and you go to the corrupt system, it's not scalable because there isn't as much corruption out there. There's a ceiling level on the scaling on it. All right. Whereas before they were harboring and holding it down. Now we're letting everybody be the bank. We're letting everybody be able to put out loans. We're letting everybody be able to do these things. All these things that you guys controlled and hampered, we're going to open it up. We're going to see how good you guys really are. And I'm like, okay, it's great. Let's move forward. That sounds great. So they're losing their grip, and it's a very, very exciting time to be living. And very few people in my life have I been involved in this level of corruption where somebody is willing to go after you because you're not willing to go along with their bullshit. All right. And whenever that happens, you become the sovereign being. It's like, you can flex on me and do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're still a wanker, man. Be like, at the end, like, I'm going to go do whatever I'm going to do because I'm sovereign. I don't have to follow the order. I don't have to follow the orders. You're being ordered. You're a follower right out of the box. Like the language that these guys are going to be like, but they believe it because they're like, well, because I get all this shit for over here, and I'm connected to this guy over here, and be like, yeah. But if you could choose and they could walk away, many of these guys that are involved in the higher levels, they can't walk away and they know it. So like, well, when in Rome, and that's what they do. But in this system now, you can, and nobody would ever know that you did. Like your money can go into different areas and different environments. But ultimately, they're all interconnected. It's sad. They're basically going to have to just like feed on themselves because their accountants are brothers. They do everything is all intertwined. It's like they're all like, making babies with their cousins and shit. All right. And there isn't enough of them to go around. They think that they have so much capital resource that they were going to just continue to keep doing it and controlling it in the way they do. But it'll be like, no. Once the population catches on how the system works, that stuff is just going to absolutely 100% fade away because there's just not enough of them to go around, and there isn't anything good about it. Like there isn't, like if you talk about these secret societies, like they've basically run them out. Like there's not like they're not like the Shriners driving their little go-karts around on parades for the children and stuff like that. It's not these people that I'm talking about, these upper level secret societal people that have a lot of lower level people in it that are screwing up business on the local environments. There's tons of them, and they're just like get rid of them. Like it's very exciting. At any rate, so but again, for people that are inside that space, you can start kind of working your way out of it. So and knowing full well that whenever members, it's just like what happens to the mafia. And I'm gonna cut it off here because I've been talking forever. The mafias broke, like say like the New York mafias. There was like a height to it, and then they started kind of fading away, where they started ratting on each other. All right, and then once the ship starts sinking, that's basically what's going to happen. So the ship's going to start sinking, and then the rats are just jumping off like crazy because everybody has their limit. So, but the higher level guys are going to go down with the ship, and that's ultimately what always happens. The captains go down with the ship, the lower level guys jump off, and then it's disintegrated. It doesn't mean it's going to 100% go away, but I mean, whether or not you're one of those guys that sticks around and goes through the whole thing, but it's going to be basically it's like open season, but they're going to be the ones that are ratting on each other. You know, it's going to be exciting. It's going to really jack up the markets, but because these guys run a lot of shit. So whenever this starts really occurring, Cliff has talked about this, Cliff High has talked about this, but I can see this right now. Like, what are the mechanisms that cause this effect to happen? So I'm done talking. I'll probably upload this one. Just thinking to myself, tomorrow. I don't do any like editing or anything. Be like, yeah, it's shit. You need to get it tighter. All right. There's more to come on this because the corruptive element on evaporating the corruption is of high interest because of some of the behavior that I've seen because of my experience in my business career, for sure. That like no one person is going to be saying of anything that's bond. All right. And if you're following one person, then you're a follower, and that if you're not open to other ideas and the way people are looking at things, then it's a savior complex. You want someone else to rescue you and be like, no. If you're a doer, a general, like as a general contractor, I'm using people from all over the place to get the job done. But if you only use one person and you go to one source, that's incredibly toxic. You don't want to be in that space. You want to have multiple sources to be hearing these things from. So anyway, I'm going to cut this off. I just ran way too long on this. Sorry about that. Cheers.